This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
It may be Derby week, but we've already had one episode talking about the Derby on Monday. We got Kentucky Oaks coming up tomorrow as well. Wanted to get some time to talk about some other stuff during this week too. So we're going to bring on Dr. Ed Feng for today to talk about the NFL draft, recap any big takeaways from a betting perspective from what he saw this year, talk about the Falcons, and maybe the door is open in the NFC South. And we'll take a look at tomorrow, Wednesday's NBA playoff games, and let you know where Ed sees value over at FanDuel Sportsbook. This is Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and FanDuel Research. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a managing editor of digital media for FanDuel Research, joined here as mentioned by Dr. Ed Feng. You can find his work at thepowerrank.com. Find Ed on Twitter at thepowerrank. Ed, Derby week this week. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Really enjoying digging into some NBA basketball, and it's been a lot of fun to watch. Got some interesting series going on, so yeah, I can't complain.
Yeah, I was intrigued when you told me you're betting NBA props, because I know that your foundation is in power ratings, and props are very different, but it seems like the market for props, although it's becoming more efficient, it gives you more options for betting as opposed to sides and totals and stuff like that. And I feel like for us as bettors, having more options, having more spots where bookmakers could potentially slip up or, give us some value, that's always going to be beneficial for us as bettors.
For sure. I think it's always good to find other markets. The thing that's really driven it for me is 5 Nugget Saturday. Like, it's this promise that I'm going to give you some action to bet on this particular weekend. Yeah. And that's not particularly difficult during football season and heading through March Madness, and just had a really terrific player prop during March Madness season. And I was so that's really what's driving it. And then obviously, the promise is that it goes all year round. And for me, that's a good thing because I dig into these markets, I start looking at them, and I think at the end of the day, that helps me understand the football prop markets better as well as part of my business over at the Power Rank. But the story isn't always happy. So college basketball was good and a lot of fun. We'll talk about some other markets here that I think are getting hard, and I'll try to explain why.
And we'll talk about that, plus wrap up the NFL draft later on today. Get Ed's final thoughts on that throughout the show, as always. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. As mentioned, we got you covered for your Kentucky Derby needs for this Saturday. We had Christina Blacker of FanDuel TV on Monday, breaking down her thoughts on the post-draw, fierceness as the favorite. She talked about the Kentucky Oaks a bit as well, what she's seen at Churchill Downs as she is on site for this week too. That is already posted in the Covering the Spread podcast feed, along with FanDuel TV Plus and the FanDuel YouTube page. Tomorrow, Dubs Anderson will join us of FanDuel TV, breaking down the Kentucky Oaks. I will ask Dubs for his Derby pick as well. So if you want some more horse racing thoughts throughout this week, subscribe to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, leave us a 5-star rating as well. NFL fans, gear up for the upcoming season with YouTube TV's best offer of the year. Save up to $215 when you bundle NFL Sunday Ticket with YouTube TV. Catch every out-of-market Sunday afternoon game with NFL Sunday Ticket, along with every local and nationally televised game on over 100-plus live channels with YouTube TV. Don't miss out. Offer ends May 16th. Visit NFLSundayTicket.com today. NFLSundayTicket.com. Offer provided by YouTube TV. Up to $215 off, $170 off NFL Sunday Ticket, plus $15 off your first 3 months of YouTube TV. Ends May 16th, 11:59 p.m. Pacific. Excludes digital-only games, new users only. Terms and embargoes apply. No refunds. Let's start things off here, Ed, by talking about the NFL draft. And big stunner from the draft was the Falcons. They took Michael Penix Jr. 8th overall. And we've talked about Penix on the show here before because you've been a big fan of Penix since his Indiana days, which was back in the early 1990s, it seems like. And it's a weird fit here, Ed, because they already have Kirk Cousins. I kind of think the Falcons are a bit overrated in the NFC South. They're divisional odds right now. What's your read on that move as a guy who's been a Penix fan, but also the Falcons' overall offseason this year?
I wouldn't say I've always been a Penix fan. He had a game where he completely destroyed Michigan during that COVID season. I would say I've been a fan of his game, like the way he throws the ball. And he's, he put up a lot of numbers in college, both at Indiana and at Washington. And I've actually been a little bit more impressed with some of the scouting that people have done, tape grinding, people like Matt Waldman, who actually had him as QB2 behind Caleb Williams. So, if you believe in Matt's analysis, and maybe the Atlanta Falcons do, then that was a perfectly reasonable spot to draft Michael Penix Jr. It was great on draft night, but that's why millions of people watch the draft to get some kind of drama. Everyone's so wrapped up in the NFL, and there's such a long off season that, draft night's just a great night to kind of get some drama like that. Oh, when did they call Kirk Cousins and let him know? that was super fun, right? It was like the best part of round one, that Thursday night action. I don't know if it matters at all. On the field this year, I think Kirk Cousins is going to play. I think Michael Penix will, obviously be on the roster and the heir apparent there. But those odds, I don't know. I don't know. It's kind of a bad division, so we'll see. I have yet to really dive pretty deep, the division odds or anything like that, but. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Cousins is definitely going to be an upgrade over who they had last year, and we'll see how good they can be.
That is very true. He'll definitely be an upgrade over Ritter and Heineke. I guess when I look at this division, it's partially that I'm lower on the Falcons than others, but also I think I'm just a lot higher on the Saints. And that, it makes me want to vomit, Ed, the fact that my numbers like the Saints, because I watched enough Saints last year to see the bad vibes with offensive linemen yelling at Derek Carr and stuff like that. And I don't want to have my money tied to that kind of situation, but it is a team that was efficient passing the ball last year. They've got a decent defense. Marshawn Lattimore back for this year as well. They seems like he will be on the roster for this year. So when you're in situations like that, Ed, where your numbers show value, but it kind of makes you want to be sick to your stomach, are you willing to trust the numbers in those situations, or how do you handle spots like that, like I'm in now with the Saints?
It really depends on the type of market, right? If it's like your spread model that you really trust, especially at certain parts of the NFL season, then I would go with it and ignore your gut. I think right now we're really trying to project, pretty long way, right? I mean, we're trying to project into January of 2025 here. So probably, as much as you can kind of trust some of our estimates of what's going on here, it might be a spot where you can trust your gut and maybe not make a bet there.
Yeah, we'll see how that one goes. I have not actually pulled the trigger yet, but I've gotten close. So we'll see if I do wind up biting the Saints. I'll justify it by saying I'm not locking up my money for as long, and their odds won't change in the near future. So I can always hold off and bet it later. Invest that money until then. I'd feel better about myself when I do decide to bite the bullet on the Saints down the road. Did want to talk to you about the overall betting landscape from the draft. We talked about, takeaways from betting past drafts last week, but I kind of think it might be good to wrap up this year's draft while it's still fresh and outline what your takeaways were from the 2024 draft specifically. Any big things you noticed while betting the draft this year that you want to remember when you're thinking about betting the draft next year?
I think betting the draft is getting harder. I sent out 4 bets to my members. I was pretty happy to go 2-2 and just have it be a kind of service where like, hey, look, you're going to watch the draft. Let's have some action on that Thursday night. See how it goes. Didn't do too bad. I do think it's kind of getting harder. I mean, you can see that the markets were pretty robust heading into early April, and that's always a sign that I don't know. I just felt they were robust, and we knew exactly what was going to happen with those top 10 picks in early April. And then this year, there wasn't any of those types of bets where you could see that a team was going to go heavily towards one player, and so you could bet another market like the position of their first drafted player, right? Last year did pretty well. I think I got plus 400 for CJ Stroud to go second. If you remember, there was all that drama on what Houston was going to do because nobody knew what Nick Cesaro was going to do. And so you kind of had to guess. And Daniel Jeremiah said, they're going to go with Stroud. And he was plus 400 the night before. So that was nice last year. There was none of that this year for me as well. I guess what I'm saying is I think it's harder, but maybe it just seems like that because there weren't kind of the winning bets that I've had in past years as well. The type of bets I had were just kind of over under draft positions this year. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. But I have definitely noticed from other people on Twitter that it does seem to be getting harder. You can certainly still find value if you're willing to grind it out and spend the time and use all the analytic tools. But, this is what happens, right? Like it's going to get harder. And I think, 2020, 2021, it was pretty good. It was pretty easy to bet the draft and be profitable. You're just going to have to put more work into it now. And we're going to talk about another market where I think that's true as well.
Yeah, we will. We'll get to the NBA here in a second. But for me, I think the big takeaway was you can get some good value Wednesday night, Thursday morning based off of those final mock drafts from trusted sources like Peter Schrager, Daniel Jeremiah, Dane Brugler, guys like that. They're, talking through those on the show Thursday morning.
Right.
Did I hit a sore point with someone there?
Oh, no. I'll tell you a story, but go ahead. Finish.
Okay.
Finish
So betting off their mock drafts was successful Wednesday night and then Thursday morning. I found that to be very good. The thing that I want to avoid next year is trying to quote unquote buy low on Thursday afternoon, because markets got very efficient as Thursday morning turned into Thursday afternoon. That's where we saw JJ McCarthy go from plus 130 to fall outside the top 5 to plus 150 to be outside the top 5. And I was like, okay, I think the Vikings are saying that they don't want to trade up to trying to lower the asking price from the Chargers. And so I took McCarthy top 5 at plus 160 on Thursday afternoon, thinking that, okay, this is smoke because McCarthy has been good money to go inside the top 5 for a long time. I disagree with this movement, but that movement was efficient. So I think that my takeaway was you could get good value Wednesday night, Thursday morning. I would not try to buy low on numbers that have moved in one certain direction Thursday afternoon, because it seems like those, right. And this is something that Bill Belichick mentioned, I think with Pat McAfee, saying we don't let out any actual information until 12 hours before the draft. So in those final 12 hours, if a market moves, don't steam chase, because that's a good way to get a bad number. But I also would not chase things that are lengthening, because the market is very likely to get efficient in that time. So that was my big takeaway was don't chase those values Thursday afternoon and be willing to bet off information we get from Wednesday night, Thursday morning from those key mock drafters.
For sure. So one of the things I did bet, I actually did not send this to my members because it was such a long shot, but I actually took a little bit on JC Latham to go 5th to the Chargers.
I talked about that Thursday morning. That was one based off the mock drafts. That it was 3 out of 4 that I trusted had Latham 5th. I had him first offensive lineman 13-1, was ready to count the sweet bucks, and felt very stupid once it started to move against me, probably Thursday around noon. I was like, I might have gotten overconfident in this one.
Yeah, for sure. But you got a good number there, right? 13-1.
I did, yeah, but doesn't matter. Doesn't pay the bills.
There was a couple of sources that I was looking at, I think maybe Wednesday morning, maybe Tuesday morning. So I actually had him at 26-1 to be the 5th pick to the Chargers. Yeah. And that goes to what? 3-1 or something?
It was plus 320 Thursday morning. Yeah.
Right. And I didn't really follow it after that, but then I felt pretty good about it, right? Because, all this buzz, Chargers want a lineman and they don't like alt. And you go into the draft and you're like, okay, well, if I'm going to lose this, it's probably because the Chargers trade out of that position, right? They trade down. That's the loss. So when the Chargers, when they announced that the Chargers that the pick is in, I'm like, oh, this is sweet. I love it. And then they pick Joe Alt. So that's how it goes sometimes. It's just that's how it goes.
I was in the same boat with that one. That was one where information was out there Wednesday, Thursday, didn't break our way. It was more so later in the morning Thursday that it began to look like it might be alt. But there were other ones like Adunze over 8.5, Byron Murphy over 14.5. Those are things that you could pick up based off those late mock drafts. So betting it based on Wednesday night, Thursday morning, but not betting it as we get closer to the draft on Thursday. Let's talk about some NBA now, Ed, because we got some NBA games coming up on Wednesday. And that's the luxury of the playoffs, is that these markets are for a very long time. We can bet and talk about props the day before. The problem is that means the props are for a long time. They can get bet in submission, and that can potentially take away some value. But I want to talk to you because you've been getting more into props, and you mentioned it's because of the newsletter, but it's a different ball game than it is to bet sides and totals and stuff like that. So What has been the process for you for developing a prop betting process?
Right. I mean, for me, I've tinkered around with trying to be a little bit more quantitative with things, and I haven't really come up with anything that I love. I think the biggest insight is just kind of looking at this market and seeing that's significantly sharper than last year. So let me give you an example. One approach that I have is that, the totals tend to go down as the series goes on, right? It's a little more free-flowing at the beginning, but by the time that you see a team for the fifth or the sixth time, you kind of know what they're going to do. You can kind of anticipate their sets, get them to take more time, fewer possessions in the game. So if you even look at a series, relatively non-competitive series like Miami at Boston, the total for game one was 210.5. The current total is 199.5. for game 5, which I believe, it's being played tomorrow. So that gives you an example. Like, I mean, that's an 11-point difference, right? So we expect fewer points. And my general thinking for this is that stars are going to contribute a bigger fraction of points as the series goes on. And so the idea is to bet the under on role players. And so you have a market like Caleb Martin. So a very good, hardworking player for the Miami Heat, but no one's going to confuse him for a superstar. And he's been really good in the series. And this is, really a perfect type of player to fade. He's made 50% of his threes this series. And you want to go under on his points. And I actually, it moved. So, of course, I have written here Caleb Martin under 11.5 points, which makes a lot of sense. He averages about 10 points over the course of the regular season. And but this is actually a perfect example because this same thing happened in the either the finals or the Eastern Conference Finals last year. Like Caleb Martin got super hot. And last year, you could get Caleb Martin under 14.5. So, and I remember putting that in my newsletter and it lost. But then I just kept betting it and it started to win after that. I actually really like going under on role players for Miami because Eric Spoelstra has a pretty quick hook if his role players are not playing well. Jaime Jaquez is a player that, his point total has been like 14.5. I lost on that. And then, but he's gone under the last couple games. Actually really had his minutes reduced in the last game. And when I checked on FanDuel, there actually wasn't a points market for Jaime Jaquez. So Spoelstra's got a quick hook. Caleb Martin's a fine, hardworking player, but is exactly the type of player that I look to go under on in these types of situations as, players like Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo are going to tend to get more of the shots without Jimmy Butler there. Martin, if he misses a couple threes, maybe he's not playing well on defense, doesn't even get the opportunity to get close to 11.5. Unfortunately, now 10.5 points. So, anyways, that's the type of logic that I try to get into, especially as you get in later in the series. We're expecting fewer points in these games. Those points are going to be scored by stars. So let's try going for the under on role players.
And that's not specific to just the Heat, correct? It's more so that the Heat are a bigger emphasis for it because of Spoelstra's coaching style. But like that logic applies to other teams too, correct?
Yeah, the logic does apply. And we'll talk about another one soon here when we get into Mavs and Clippers.
Okay, so let's talk here about more fully that Heat and Celtics game. Right now, the total is a 200, back up a half point, 200 right now. The spread is still 13.5. We did see the Celtics bounce back after that game 3 loss, pretty dominant win on Monday night. When you're looking at this, mention Martin with his point total going down to 10.5, under is now plus 102. Anything stand out to you for this game in number 5?
I think Boston's going to kill him. I mean, Boston's going to be has been a juggernaut. Miami doesn't have Jimmy Butler. Miami did win a game this series, but I want to say they hit 60% of their threes or something insane like that in that game. So I really don't think Miami has a chance in this game. I mean, Boston should march on and be grumpy that they didn't sweep them.
I think that the Heat approach, though, is very interesting because it kind of seems like they know that they're underdogs and have decided to say, F it, let's chuck up some shots and kind of see what happens, banking on the fact that variance can be a good thing. And that's interesting because it's like a very volatile approach, but volatility is their friend in this instance where the Boston money line is minus 1,000. So I feel like if you're looking for, angles to play here, leaning into that volatility and kind of assuming that they keep at that would be a way to go. It's just kind of hard to know what markets may be beneficial, may benefit from a high variance approach. We can probably assume the Heat will be doing that once again.
Yeah, probably. I'm sure there's markets out there that you could probably take advantage of that. But I think the idea is right. I mean, Spoelstra is a great coach, and I think he's made this more competitive than people thought it would be.
Yeah. All righty, let's talk here about the second game on Wednesday night. That is the Mavericks and the Clippers. No Kawhi Leonard confirmed out for this game just recently. Right now, the Mavs are 3-point favorites. Total in this game is 208.5, and Clippers came close to blowing a massive lead in Sunday's game 4, but series all tied up at 2-2. So any bets you like for game number 5 on Wednesday, Ed?
Yeah, I mean, this was another game where I just thought that, the markets are really hard, right? I mean, you look at, Luka Doncic is, his point totals at 32.5. It's pretty close to his, just slightly below what his regular season average is. And when you kind of do some analysis and think of how many points, given that this total is 209.5 down from 220 in game 1, can you bet the under on Luka? And can you actually come on a show and tell people to go bet the under on Luka because that you have a chance of looking like a complete fool? And the answer really is no. Like, his shot volume's up from where it's been in the regular season, which is what you expect. His minutes are up. So even though you're expecting significantly fewer points than what the Dallas scored during the regular season, you just I don't think going under Luka or Kyrie in this game is really a plus EV bet. And I really do think that, like, these NBA player points, like, there's market making books out there that are setting these markets based on sharp action, right? It's not like the college basketball points prop market that was being set by a computer. And when it's set by a computer, there's all kinds of ways to find some inefficiencies with that by just following the game and looking at higher usage and so on and so forth. I do think there is value in one player. Derek Lively is a bouncy 6'11" role player for Dallas. He actually, when you watch the game, he kind of sticks out because he's always blocking shots and he's a big energy guy. And Dallas is an interesting team because they have Luka and Kyrie, who are terrific offensive players that don't play a lick of defense. And they've surrounded them with these athletic guys that can play defense. And Derek Lively is like a perfect example of that. Lively averaged about 8.8 points in the regular season. His minutes are down, even though he seems like he's on the court all the time, and that move too. Awesome. Great. So yeah, I really like Lively under 7.5 minus 138. And of course it's moved. And it's part of the reason why I think these markets are pretty hard right now.
Well, it's also tough too, because I was talking before, like, oh, it's nice we have these player props up for a longer time, but that also means they're up for a longer time. And the longer they're up, the more time they have to get efficient. So I feel like if you're betting NBA player props, your best route for doing so is get into them. Like, let's say with Heat Celtics, game 4 was last night. Right. You're probably going to want to bet those Tuesday morning before you get more money into these markets to grind them into efficiency.
Yep. I would completely agree with that. And, and there's a bunch of other things I looked at too. Tim Hardaway Jr. Got hurt in game 2 and hasn't played since. A lot of those minutes have gone to Jones, I think. Can you go up a sec?
Yeah.
Derek Jones is getting a lot of those minutes, but I think that's properly priced into where his market is. Kawhi Leonard isn't going to play. Terrence Mann has gotten a lot of those minutes, and that's been adjusted as well. So yeah, it's a pretty sharp market right now. I think it's significantly sharper than what I saw of the market, last year during the Eastern Conference Finals, NBA Finals. Right. So yeah, that's where we're at. Good job, market making books.
I think the takeaways here are checking out totals as they decrease throughout the series. Implications of that specifically for role players and potentially betting unders on role players as the series goes along as superstars soak up a larger percentage of a smaller pie, and then betting these player props early the morning after the most recent game before these numbers can get grinded into efficiency, and taking advantage of the fact that that's the least liquid, that's the least efficient those markets will be the entire time. So kind of being cognizant of that as you're betting these games is the way to get around the issues we've run into even here with those numbers becoming more efficient even the day before the game.
Yeah, for sure. And if you do bet them early, you can kind of see, I do think you can probably take closing line value a little more seriously in this market than maybe in the past. So you can see whether you're on the right side of things. Yeah, actually I had Jason Tatum over points in the previous game, and it didn't win, but his point total's up a point for this game, so take that as a good thing. I've actually tried betting some stars over their point totals. Had Shai Gilgeous-Alexander over his point total, which lost, but he made less than half his foul shooters for someone who's making almost 90%. Hasn't really worked, but I'd be interested to see what the SJ market is for the next series. I think it was kind of low, partially because he had Herbert Jones on him as a defender and a guy who makes his living playing defense. But we'll see what happens as we move on to the next series.
A lot of time for them to rest to get ready for the next round for the Thunder. That's all we got here from Ed for today. But Ed, what's going on for you this week at the Power Rank?
Yeah, I am writing my free email newsletter. So check out 5 Nuggets Saturday. If you're looking for action on any given weekend, that is going to be the free service for you. I'm going to figure out a way somehow to do it during the off season before we get back into football. So check that out at thepowerrank.com.
Alrighty. And find Ed on Twitter at The Power Rank. Check out his work at thepowerrank.com to sign up for that newsletter as well. And also check out the Football Analytics Show wherever you get your podcasts. Ed, thank you as always. Good luck betting the NBA playoffs. We'll talk to you once again in the summers. We're going to talk some soccer with you, though. It should be a lot of fun.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it. Thanks.
Alrighty. Again, find Ed on Twitter at The Power Rank and go to thepowerrank.com to sign up for 5 Nugget Saturday. Before we close up for today, got to go back through recommendations from last week here on the show and recap how things went. Let's begin things with the NFL draft. We had Connor Allen on to preview things first. You can find Connor on Twitter at Connor Allen NFL 444 and check out his Move the Line podcast as well. The recommendation from Connor was Brock Bowers over 12.5 at -114. Got that number kind of fading the Jets, the to draft Bowers discussion. Bowers went 13th, so that one did wind up hitting. Good call by Connor there. Other one he had was a parlay of Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and JJ McCarthy to all go inside the top 5. McCarthy obviously went 10th, so that one did not hit, but did get the Bowers one from Connor. Again, Connor Allen NFL on Twitter. We had Ed on last week, talked about a couple of positional bets for Terrion Arnold and Troy Fautanu. The Terrion Arnold loan is under 15.5 at -108, and every defensive player pretty much hit their over. So Arnold went 24th overall, didn't get that one, but did get the Fautanu one, because he went to the Steelers at pick 20. So over 15.5, -158 was a win there for Ed. As for me, we had that final show on Thursday, breaking down the final mock drafts, what we learned from those, and last minute NFL draft bets, and wound up going 2-3 on these, but the winners were +118 and +188. And that was Roma Dunze over 8.5, +118. He went 9th. And then Byron Murphy over 14.5, +188. He went 16th. So again, talked about how those were takeaways from those final mock drafts. Both those did wind up hitting. When we talked about with Ed was JC Latham to go 5th overall. I think that was +320 when we talked on Thursday morning. He went 7th instead to the Titans, as the Titans and the Chargers flip-flopped from what most mock drafts had, so didn't quite get that one on Latham. The final two were longer shots to go inside the first round from Tom Pelissero. Keon Coleman was plus 340. We talked on Thursday morning to go in the first round, and Junior Colson was 4-1. Colson went third round, so did not go close there, but Keon Coleman, 33rd overall. Missed it by one spot there at plus 340. The Bills traded back twice, drafted Coleman, 33rd overall. If they had stuck at 28, would they have picked him? If they had stuck at 32, would they have picked him? Can't know. So that's unfortunate, but still came close with that one. Hopefully did profit depending on the scaling with the Adunze and the Murphy overs. As for NASCAR last week, I went 2-1 there. The two winners were Toyota to win at plus 150 for NASCAR in Dover. Denny Hamlin won the race. Almost got run down by Kyle Larson, but was able to outrun him there to get the win. So cash Toyota plus 150 to win. Other win was Noah Gragson top 10 at 5-1. Gragson qualified really well inside the top. I think he qualified like 5th. So that one closed at plus 250. Gregson was kind of running in like the mid-teens, the high teens all day, but then caught a caution at the right time, got up to 5th, and he stayed 4th the rest of the race. So did cash that at 5-1. Other one is Tyler Reddick at top 10, plus 105. He finished 11th. He got caught on the wrong end of that Gregson caution, or the caution where Gregson benefited. Couldn't quite get his way past Ty Gibbs at the end. Did pass Ross Chastain in the final lap, but finished 11th, but got the win at plus 150 for Toyota and 5-1 for Noah Gragson as well. We had Austin Cass on to talk some EPL. Find Austin on Twitter at Austin Cass. He is a senior editor for us at FanDuel Research. 3 bets from Austin on the EPL side of things. First one was Tottenham versus Arsenal. He had under 3.5 goals at minus 150. Kind of a fluky 4th goal, but then they did have a 5th goal later on. So the over hit there. Couldn't quite get the under for Tottenham versus Arsenal. Second one was Liverpool over 2.5 goals. They took on West Ham. That was actually a 2-2 draw in that one. So 2 goals for Liverpool. They went under in that number. So no win for Liverpool over there. Final one was Rasmus Højlund to score or assist, minus 130. That was for Man United versus Burnley. Didn't get a win there. So that was from Austin Cass. Again, find Austin on Twitter at Austin Cass and check out all of his work at FanDuel Research. Finally, we had Tom Vecchio on to preview NBA and NHL playoffs. Only one of those markets has finished so far. That was the Suns versus Wolves series. Tom had the Suns or Wolves to go 6 games, or Suns versus Wolves to go 6 games at plus 185. But the Wolves swept. So go Minnesota. Go. Couldn't get the win there for Tom, but happy for my Wolves. Can I reclaim them now? Is it okay to do that? But for the Wolves advancing with the sweep there. That is all that we have here for today on Covering the Spread. Big thank you once again to Dr. Ed Feng. Check him out on Twitter at The Power Rank and find his work at thepowerrank.com to get 5 Nuggets Saturday. You can find me on Twitter at Jim Sonis. You can find FanDuel Research on Twitter at FanDuel Research. Don't forget Kentucky Derby podcast posted on the Covering the Spread podcast feed, FanDuel YouTube page, and FanDuel TV Plus, and the Kentucky Oaks preview coming up tomorrow with Dubs Anderson. We'll talk to all of you then. This has been Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.